Hello everyone, doing a little Pilaf deck profile for y'all for the standard format. I was waiting because the rule changed for Bardock, so I wanted to do some adjustments and proper thought before showing off the deck. Keep in mind this is for standard, so it does use a lot of cards that aren't in set 10. This is one of those I want to continue building the deck past my set 10 collection type thing. It is a powerful deck, it runs fast. There's versions that can win on turn 2, turn 3. There's versions that can win turn 3, turn 4. And then there's even more control-y versions that I really wouldn't suggest. But this is one of the turn 3, turn 4 builds. So, of course, we have Pilaf as the leader. And then we're going to have 4 of the units in Jiren. So it's probably one of the best ones for Pilaf because he gives himself double strike, and then you can give him triple attack with your leader. He actually is pretty good defensively too, between his active battle -3 and his auto once per turn. So I like that. Obviously there are some weaknesses to each build. Overall, you definitely have to rely more on the Shu in this build to use your mana more efficiently to also stay safe compared to like the Gotenks or the Vegeta build. Also, your turn 2, you aren't as explosive as you are with that build, so it gives your opponent a little bit more time to stabilize, but you do gain a lot more later game power, so you become a little bit less glass cannon-y by upgrading to the turn 3/4 build. There are no other unisons in this deck. There are some in the side deck. My general rule is if you're playing aggro, you don't want more than 4 because every unison you draw cannot be used as combo power. And if you're the aggro player, you need every card in your hand to push towards lethal. This also goes into if the form becomes faster, slower decks are going to be punished because they're going to run 5-6 unisons, which means their hand has dead cards. So even though they might have 1 or 2 more cards in hand than you, that doesn't mean they can combo with all of them. So that's why you want to keep your unisons. I'd say 5 max, and if you're playing aggro, 4 max. You don't want to go above 4 as aggro player since you need the combo power. Next we have 4 copies of the Nappa. So I don't run the Bulma. Number 1, Nappa does not have a life requirement. Number 2, it's 20k power for 2 swings, and this deck swings a lot. And number 3, early game, it lets us make our board big enough to play Tau, which is even more relevant now with the Bardock change. Next, 4 copies of Trunks. Being crit, it's resource denial for our opponent, early aggression, lets us take some life. The beauty of Pilaf is in theory you can awaken at 8 life, but some life is still a card draw, especially against control decks. And the critical can proc our Bardocks, because yes, we still run them, just a different ratio. 3 copies of Frieza Death's Embrace. You could put this up to 4 if you want. It is honestly one of the best red 1-drops in the game right now. Cantrips, and then just the active battle is just a great mana sink for those games where you are running low on hand size, or maybe you don't want to waste your hand and you don't want to advance your board, so you swing what you have on the board and use your energy to swing a lead. It can also be used as removal, so a super versatile card. Love it because it's great at all phases of the game, and it's one of the best turn 1 1-drops because you can't really swing turn 1 unless you're going second with Trunks, while this still lets you get a draw at the beginning of the game. So basically it lets you see more cards, have more information, know what to charge better. You could put up to 4 if you want. 3 of the Pilaf engine, like little searchers. I don't run 4 of any of them because you only really want to cast 1 per game to win. Sometimes you might do 2 in a game, but statistically speaking, you should have 1 of the pieces in your deck at 3. You don't want too many more, because the more you have, the more is in your life, the more is in your opening hand, and you don't want to see a lot of them, because they're not the best card to see in your hand. You want them more in your deck. So yes, even though we run the risk of whiffing on our hits, we also make it where we see the cards less in our hand. You'll notice there are no copies of the field to recycle them. Like I've said before, the field is 1 mana and it's a +0. You're drawing 3, but you played the card. Yeah, the field can do stuff, but it's not impactful enough to warrant calling it like a +1, because it's not. It's still a -3 +3 for a +0, and realistically, the cards you're drawing should be as good as the cards in your deck or in your hand. And sometimes it could be worse. The only benefit is recycling these cards, and by cutting them down to 3, we don't need to worry about as much. So I say don't play copies of it. It's also uses your mana that could be used for aggro. It has no combo power for extra cards in your hand or dead. And if you are against a Gotenks, you're letting your Gotenks opponent draw. So you don't want to do that. And then 3 copies of the shoe. Once again, same thing as all the other ones. A lot of 3-ofs. It's like we're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I'll put the foil one in front. So 3 copies of Tau. Oh, there's 2 foil ones. My bad. 3 copies of Tau. Another crit for Bardock. Just as a warning, I probably should have said before, but the deck's not the cheapest. 3 copies of Topo. It has gone down because of the reprint, so that's nice. I do have some reprint copies, 1 foil of the reprint, but I just like using the older one for now. 3 copies of the shoe. I don't think you need this in the turn 2 version of the deck, where you're running Gotenks or Vegeta. But in the turn 3 version, this could be your turn 1 or 2 play. And then turn 3, you don't have to waste your mana doing the Pilaf chain. You also don't have to you can do like other plays with like Broly Crown or other 1-drops or other shenanigans. Or you can even do 2 Pilaf chains in some case by using your mana efficiently. You can even hold up the 2 for negates and stuff. So he's although he's a -1, he's a +1 or +2 in mana efficiency. And aggro is known for losing cards in hand if it means dealing more damage, which is what he lets us do. We've gone down to 3 copies of the Bardock. You could go down to 2 if you want, but I still want to see it enough because there is a few crits in the deck. But I don't want 4 anymore because I don't want it every game. And I don't want to clog my hand with 0 combo power. So that's why it's down to 3. 3 copies of Afterimage. I like the fact that in theory it's 2 negates, while the set 10 counter attack, it's not even proper negates, it's partial negates, is only 1, even though it's 0 mana for no life. You need to have your unison out. Also, it only minuses 15, which against taller decks doesn't do anything, while Afterimage does. Next, 2 copies of the Draft Box 517. So the beauty of this card is it lets us bring back our 1-drop, specifically the Frieza. So in theory, we average out it's still a +1 because it's 2 bodies on board, 1 card from hand, then draw 1, so it's a +1. And it negates an attack, pretty good. It's our recovery option, and you don't always need Topo for everything. Some boards are just tall, not wide, so this is a case of recovery, especially against like hand destruction decks, where you might need to stop a critical attack and then regain your board after they've blown it up. 2 copies of Explain Weakness Vegeta, Draft Box 4. This really is probably better as Draft Box 5 Goku, because it does have an option of being a 2 mana removal, ignoring barrier. And then these would go on the side if you do that. I don't have any of the Gokus, but I still like this. A lot of times I charge it. It's more for other wide matchups. Bulma is especially useful against. And then next we have 2 Champas. Honestly, I charge them most of the time, but it's always good to have that pocket double strike. Also, just lets your leader become more aggressive if need be, because sometimes you do get down to not having any bodies left, and this is your kind of your reach. 2 copies of Broly Crown. I do have some of the new ones, 1 foil, but I'm still using the old ones for now until I can foil more out. Then I'll probably switch. I have a third one in the side deck, two of them main, just because it's not a one drop you play early, and realistically you want a early game one drop. So even in some matchups I charge it. There's also a lot of people who are leaving less mon open because there's more free play counters, so it doesn't work against everyone. Next, 2 copies of our Overwhelm Bardock. It's a draw 2 discard 1, gets rid of some of our dead cards. It's a 20k, which is just good for swinging against things and lets us advance our board. You don't want too much Overwhelm in this deck because any extra ones are kind of just clogging your hand. And finally, a 1 of Draftbox 5 freeze if you want, so you could change the ratio of 2 of these and 1 Champa. This is here just because the extra crit, just so we can get surprised. Hey, you let me play a Bardock. Keep in mind, Bardock still triggers all Self-Awakening effects, and a lot of people are going to be playing Self-Awakening effects. So, Bardock's not completely dead. It's just not a 4-of anymore. You have to play a little bit differently. So that's the main deck. You'll notice there's absolutely no copies of Ostrich Form or the 6-drop. Number 1, we have Overwhelm. Number 2, it's 3 mana for in a lot of matchups of vanilla, especially against yellow where they can blank things. Shinra, and also the ability to stop restanding just makes it too much of a mana sink for not enough value. So that's why we don't run it. It's a nice reach card, but I think they're just generically better red reach cards. So why wouldn't I just play generically better cards than an engine card? For the side deck, we have 1 of Yamcha. Just against other wide decks, you just have to remember that it doesn't affect cards that haven't been played yet. So you need to think about how you use this. It is still decent against Pilaf, because since his auto is playing cards, there is a counter window 2, which in case you'd played in counter window 2. A third copy of the Broly, good against blue and stuff, are just people holding up mana because they think they need to protect themselves. Other red decks are playing Topo and the like. 2 copies of Wolfang Fist. Basically, if we need more defense, especially if we can't keep our mana up, Wolfang Fist is useful. It's not useful against tall boards, like I said, so this is really more of a side end against wide boards. Two copies of the Unison Vegeta. So the reason why we have 2 of these inside, even though Jiren is so amazing, let's say we need to be lower to the ground for some reason, we might side out 2 Jirens for Vegetas. Also for against Syndex, the Vegeta, if we're on the play, lets us, they play their Dragon Ball turn 1, their 1 or 2 star ball, whatever, I don't even remember the numbers. they're one attack dragons. Turn 2, you'd use the Vegeta, you use its ability. Leader's going to swing as a 15 or 20k depending on the situation, or even another battle card. And it can attack Atmo battle cards. So that's going to let us get rid of their ball because it's a 1 attack. They'd have to -3/4 to save it, which probably isn't going to be worth it for them because that means they're going to lose in the long run against an aggro player. Because next turn we're just going to go off anyway. 2 copies of the Vegito Unison. I'm not a big fan of it. It is the slowest of all the Unisons, and I don't main deck any Pilaf version really, other than maybe like a Store Championship one. It's more of a card advantage type thing. So if you think you're going to go a little bit longer, it can generate card advantage. It does have interesting effect that can stop topos and the like. So maybe if you want to slow the game down against like a AOD deck, you could try that. And against control, it could also just deal 1 damage with a -5 in the late game if they don't have a lot of battle cards. Although realistically, you should be pushing face on control anyway. This SCR is not mandatory at all. I just use it as a reach card. Realistically, this could be a SCR like the Great Ape just because it's removal. This is more just once again, when I think the games are going longer, I can add this in as my final turn. Next we have 2 copies of the Strapbox 5 guy. So he's good in places that Broly isn't always good in. Number 1, he goes from the warp, so we're against a player that removes a lot of our cards, or we're discarding a lot of cards. We can still use it. Number 2, it deals with multiple 20Ks on the turn. So if you know your opponent has multiple like counter attacks that get played, like all the little one drop negate battle cards, or even just playing around one topo, it's into the warp, which is relevant. Because the thing is, yeah, they can get the topo for the turn, they discard a card and they warp 2. So it's a -3, -4 if you consider the topos also been played, but it is on the board, so it kind of evens out. So basically, it's one of those situations where you know your opponent has multiple things, they're going to play multiple things in the turn, or if you know that they just have too many answers in their hand, so discarding one doesn't matter because they just have another one anyway, that's when you want to go for this. Because it's like, well, you get to use it, you want to use it this turn. If you don't want to use it this turn, okay, that's fine with me. This was a card from my drop. It was a 1 mana, no card on field, no card from hand type situation. Also, it has the ability to let us, what I criticize the castle for, it does let us do some fixing and drawing, which I'm not going to main deck a card for that, but it's just a random upside for this. If you're aggro, fixing is not what you're looking for. You aggressively mulligan as an aggro deck, you don't try to fix it later. 2 max power Kames. This is more just for like Sin, if anyone's really trying to play Baby Chain or any other thick chains anymore. We have the max power Kames of warps, which is relevant because they can't bring it back with Sin. It can also just be used as a generic negate, so if you needed more extra card negates, you could put it in against like Invoker. And finally, 2 copies of Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan. So I've switched between a lot of different cards in the side and the slot. I've had Denial of Hopes, I've had a 4 of Topo and stuff like that. The way I see it is 3 topos is enough for a lot of the wide matchups, and against a lot of the wide matchups I have other ways to deal with them, so just adding another topo didn't seem like the way to go. This also helps in the Sin matchup, where if they do get their Sin removed, if they want to play the ball again, they've got to discard 2 cards. So it kind of leaves them even on the ball. So that's pretty nice. And then against just other Pilaf decks, AOD decks, stuff like that, it forces them to neg hard. So I really like it for that. Just gotta be careful how many black cards you add, because you can't charge them, since for the Pilaf chain you need at least 3 red, and it's a turn 3 play, so your first 3 charges are all going to be red. So watch out with those ratios. Those are cases where you might think about taking out the Bardock and such. So that's a deck. I'll have a link in the description. I probably should have said that at the beginning, but for anyone who wanted to skip by all this, there'll be a link to it. But there is some explanation going on here. So I hope that was a nice little video for y'all. Yeah, I know it's not the cheapest version of the deck it can have, but I think it's more versatile and can definitely do a lot of damage while also being able to play a little bit of control. And the other reason why I just love the Pilaf leader is its alternate awakening conditions. Set 10 has a lot of alternate awakening conditions, and it's pushing out a lot of older leaders that, even if they have self-awakening, the fact that we're both 15s and I'm still at 6-8 life and they're at 4 life puts me at an advantage. So that's why I really like it. Also, on both sides, it doesn't need to attack leader. So realistically, I can start attacking other aggro decks with this and still draw. So that's the other advantage it has, the fact that you draw no matter what you attack on both sides. Thank you guys again. Best of luck. Hopefully you guys enjoy Pilaf or any deck that you play, and have fun. Bye.